In the heart of Eluwa, a quiet village surrounded by thick forests and winding rivers, lived a girl named Adanna. She was the only daughter of her parents, born after many years of prayer and patience. Her skin was the color of roasted groundnuts, and her eyes held the calm of still water. People said she was a gift from the gods, and her mother often whispered that Adanna's birth had turned her grey skies into sunshine. Adanna grew up carrying water from the stream, pounding yam in wooden mortars, and singing with other girls beneath the mango trees. Her laughter was soft, and her voice gentle, but her strength was like that of a tree rooted in dry season. From an early age, she showed signs of wisdom. She listened more than she spoke, and when she did speak, her words held weight. Her father, Okonkwo, was a respected farmer in the village. He grew maize and cassava and kept a steady compound. Though not wealthy, he held his head high, and many elders often said that his dignity was his richest harvest. He raised Adanna with discipline, and her mother, Nena, taught her to be graceful in hardship and grateful in plenty. By the time Adanna reached her 18th year, she had become the jewel of Eluwa. Suitors came from near and far, drawn by her beauty and known character. But Adanna did not let praise cloud her head. She continued waking at dawn to sweep the compound and worked in the fields with her mother, never seeking shortcuts to comfort. One day, word spread that a wealthy young man from the neighboring village of Umweke had seen Adanna at the market and asked for her hand. His name was Obinna. He was tall, handsome, and came from a family with cattle, land, and servants. His father was a chief in Umweke, and it was said that Obinna would inherit much wealth when the time came. When Obinna's people came to visit Adanna's family, they came in numbers. They brought wine, kola nuts, goats, and fabrics of many colors. The sight of them filled the village square. Okonkwo was honored but careful. He knew that wealth could blind the heart. He asked many questions, but Obinna's father assured him of their son's intentions. They offered a bride price so large it made the villagers whisper. Some said it was enough to rebuild the village well twice over. Adanna said little. She did not know Obinna. She had seen him only once across the market path. But her parents were pleased, and the elders smiled upon the union. A date was set. The bride price was accepted. The village prepared. What no one knew was that behind Obinna's handsome smile and fine words hid a truth as bitter as unripe kola. The day of the traditional wedding arrived with great excitement. The village of Eluwa was filled with colors, music, and celebration. Drums echoed through the trees, women danced with joyful steps, and elders blessed the union. Obinna and his family arrived in fine clothes, carrying more gifts: baskets of yam, jugs of palm wine, and strings of coral beads. The bride price had already been accepted, but the show of wealth continued. Many in Eluwa whispered that Adanna was lucky, that her future would be full of comfort and honor. Adanna sat quietly in her mother's hut, surrounded by women who rubbed oil on her skin and fixed beads in her hair. She smiled when expected, but her heart was not at peace. She barely knew the man she was to marry. Still, she trusted her parents' judgment and the elders' blessing. She reminded herself that in her culture, marriage was not just about love, it was about family, community, and duty. When Adanna was led out, dressed in a wrapper of golden red, the village erupted in song. Obinna placed a necklace around her neck and smiled as he received her hand. The ceremony ended with blessings and prayers. That night, Adanna left Eluwa and followed Obinna to Umweke, leaving behind the only home she had ever known. But what waited for her in Obinna's house was not the dream she had been promised. The large compound looked grand from the outside, but inside it was cold and full of silence. Obinna's mother did not welcome her warmly. His sisters barely spoke to her. There were servants, yes, but they moved like shadows, fearful and silent. The laughter and kindness that filled Adanna's home were missing here. At first, she tried to be patient. She woke early to sweep the compound, helped in the kitchen, and greeted everyone with respect. She waited for Obinna to show her love and kindness, but he quickly revealed another side. He rarely came home early. When he did, his words were sharp and his eyes distant. He treated her not like a wife, but like someone who had been purchased. Weeks passed, and Adanna discovered that Obinna already had a woman in the city. Some even said they had children. He had hidden this from her family and from the elders. The bride price had been paid not for love, but for appearance, to please his father, to strengthen alliances, and to show off wealth. Adanna had been a trophy, not a partner. When she tried to speak, Obinna mocked her. He reminded her that her bride price had been accepted. He said her family had already eaten, already danced, already received the goats and gifts. According to tradition, returning the bride price meant shame for her family. It meant disgrace for her father. Adanna was trapped. But Adanna did not weep endlessly. She remembered her mother's teachings to remain strong, to think deeply, and to never let hardship poison the heart. She began to rise early, not just to sweep, but to walk to the nearby stream where she could think in peace. There, in the quiet of nature, she began to build courage. She had no power, no money, and no support in Umweke. But she had something stronger: conviction. At the stream near the edge of Umweke, where the water whispered over stones and birds sang gently in the trees, Adanna found the space to breathe. Each morning, before the compound awoke, she slipped away with a small calabash to fetch water. But it was not water she needed, it was strength. Here, she prayed, not just to the gods of her ancestors, but to the spirit within her that refused to die. Adanna began to notice things. The servants in Obinna's house, mostly girls from poorer families, worked without joy. One girl had a swollen cheek, another limped slightly. They feared Obinna and his brothers. Adanna began to speak softly to them, asking nothing at first, only listening. Over time, they whispered their stories. Some were taken from their homes to pay off debts. Others had been brought in through deceit. There was pain in the compound, and it had been hidden behind wealth and status. At night, Adanna could not sleep. She thought of her parents, of the pride in her father's eyes when he accepted the bride price. She thought of the smiles at her wedding. How could she return home now? To leave the marriage would mean disgrace. The bride price would need to be returned, and her family had already shared it with the community. Yet staying would mean dying slowly, every day losing a piece of her joy, her dignity, her voice. Weeks turned into months. Obinna became colder. He spent more time in the city and brought gifts only to silence suspicion. When he did visit, he showed no kindness. Adanna never cried in front of him. She cooked, she greeted him, she remained respectful. But inside, her thoughts burned like firewood under a clay pot. One day, Adanna returned to the stream and saw something she had not seen before. A group of village women gathered there, washing clothes and laughing together. For the first time, she joined them. She listened as they spoke about life, family, and survival. They did not know her well, but they welcomed her like one of their own. It was then that she heard something key that stayed with her forever. One of the women said, "A woman is not clay to be shaped by anyone's hands. She is the potter too. That night, Adanna lay awake. She remembered her childhood, her dreams, and her quiet strength. She thought of all the other women trapped in silence like her. She had been given away like a prize, but she was not a possession. She decided she would act. Adanna began her plan quietly. She did not shout. She did not argue. Instead, she began to prepare herself from within. She woke earlier, walked farther, and listened more deeply. She studied the movements of the house, the silence of the servants, and the hypocrisy of Obinna's household. She learned not just her enemy, but her own strength. When Obinna returned from one of his trips, she greeted him as always, but this time she asked to visit her parents. It was a simple request, framed in humility. Obinna agreed, uninterested in her reasons. He believed she had accepted her place. He did not know that inside her calm face a storm was forming. Adanna returned to Eluwa with a quiet heart but firm steps. Her parents were overjoyed to see her. Her mother embraced her tightly, but her father noticed something different. The Adanna who had left was quiet and soft. The Adanna who returned walked like someone who had survived a battle. She did not cry. She did not complain. She asked to speak with her father privately. Under the mango tree behind the compound, she told him the truth, not every cruel detail, but enough for him to understand. Obinna had lied. He had used wealth to cover shame. He had betrayed not just Adanna, but the family's trust and the village's honor. Her father sat in silence for a long time. His pride had been deeply wounded, but when he finally spoke, his voice trembled not with anger, but with sorrow. He had failed to protect the daughter he raised with so much love. And yet, he saw something else. She was not broken. She had grown even stronger. The next day, Okonkwo called the village elders. Adanna stood beside him, not behind him. She told them what had happened, clearly, respectfully, but with strength. The elders listened. Some frowned, uncomfortable with her boldness, but others nodded slowly. They had known of bride price as a tradition, but now they saw the pain it could hide. The decision was not easy. The elders debated long into the night, but in the end, something shifted. Okonkwo offered to return a portion of the bride price, not because Adanna had failed, but because the marriage had been founded on deceit. He made it clear his daughter's dignity was worth more than goats and wrappers. The next market day, the story spread, not of Adanna's shame, but of her courage. Women from other villages began to ask questions. Could a bride price be questioned? Could tradition be wrong? Could a woman speak? In Umueke, Obinna was furious. He sent messengers. He threatened shame. But Adanna had already left his house and his power. She returned not as a runaway, but as a woman who reclaimed her life. She stayed in Eluwa, and with the blessing of the village, she began to teach other girls about herbs, craft, and courage. Soon, her home became a place where girls came to learn not how to be quiet wives, but strong women. She used part of her father's land to start a small garden and pottery space. The same hands that once carried water now shaped clay into vessels of beauty and use. She had been bought, but never owned. She had been hurt, but never broken. She had been betrayed, but never silenced. Moral of the story: true value is not measured by wealth, beauty, or tradition. It is found in integrity, resilience, and how we choose to lift others. Adanna's story teaches us that. Don't let rejection define you. She was betrayed, but she rose higher because she did not stay bitter. Your beginnings don't limit your future. Even after losing everything, she built a life of meaning. Skill and strength matter more than status. She earned respect not through marriage, but through impact. Success means lifting others. Her greatest success was empowering other girls to find their voices. The earth gives to those who respect it. She worked with her hands and gave back to her community. Quiet strength is the most lasting. She never shouted, but her legacy spoke louder than words.